Hey everybody, this is Kelsey from the Arcane Library, and today I'm going to walk you through the latest adventure I have written called Gate of the Lens Wizards. So this is, I think it's the longest adventure I've actually written by page count, and this is for 15th level characters, and it's a full-length adventure. It's going to take at least 2 sessions, probably. It might even take more. And this is also something a little different. It's a bit of a departure from what I've done because it's very, very exploration focused. So it's going to look a little bit different than adventures I've released in the past, ever so slightly. You may know that I usually include a dramatic question with each kind of scene that happens. And in this adventure, there are fewer of them because it's going to be so difficult to predict what the motivations of the characters are by the time they're even halfway through this adventure that it makes it more difficult to create a consistent dramatic question. But I think there are still ones where you need it, and when there isn't one, it's going to be pretty obvious how to motivate the characters in those moments anyway, so I think you'll be able to have no trouble with that. So, how to explain this adventure? Now, again, this is a somewhat high-level adventure, so we're going a little cosmic here, but you can also tell from the cover that there's a little blend of sci-fi in here. And it's kind of a mix of fantasy and magic, where what precipitates the whole adventure is that the characters are alerted to the fact that this tribe of Kizian people who live in the Dhalpurna Mountains have found this gate up in this misty, empty, remote field in the mountains. And they actually are afraid of this gate because 2 of their warrior princes from opposing tribes kind of challenged each other to step through it, and so they were playing a little bit of chicken, and they both did, and now neither of the 2 have come back. And so the characters catch wind of this and likely come to this area to sort out what's going on, especially because it seems sort of cosmic and planar in nature. So let me tell you what's actually happening here. Now, this gate is a gate that leads to a distant jungle moon, and it leads beneath the surface of this moon into the cave systems below there. And it's the site of a few civilizations. So this place has existed for a long time, and very, very long ago, there was a civilization that made an artifact called the Chronicle. And this artifact is a device that actually can control and alter the course of time. But the civilization that made that is gone, and in the intervening time, there have now been 2 groups of people who've moved into this area. One of them is a set of a warren of lunar spiders. And lunar spiders are sort of ramped up cousins of phase spiders who've taken to traveling ethereally through the cosmos. And these lunar spiders moved into some ancient tunnels and holes in the beneath the surface of the moon. And while going about their regular spidery lives, they encountered a piece of the Chronicle that imbued them with intelligence. And so these spiders are now intelligent creatures, and they are seeking greater and further intelligence, so they're looking for more pieces of the Chronicle, which there are 3. And the other group of people in this location are lens wizards. So these are sort of spacefaring, magical, scientific wizard creatures with glass skulls and one big eye in the top of their skull. And they love... Is my light? Oh, that light acts crazy. So if it changes, it's just a ghost. But these lens wizards are astronomers, essentially. And what they're doing is they've actually built themselves a little lab in this area, and they're trying to find the same pieces of this artifact to power their telescope, because they want to peer into the very center of the universe and see what crazy thing lurks there. They think something insane or dangerous or interesting is there, and they want to know what it is. So we have both these 2 parties in opposition. The spiders want these magical cores to become more intelligent and to not lose their consciousness that they've gained, and the lens wizards want the cores so that they can increase the power of their telescope and see what threat or interesting thing it is that lies at the center of the universe. And so the characters walk into this. Now, I've given you the whole crazy background. The adventure synopsis is the characters basically untangling this situation and deciding if and what they want to do about the artifacts that are powering this whole problem. So when the characters first encounter the gate in the mountains, the first encounter here is the Crackling Gate. And they're given some potential adventure hooks which revolve around maybe finding these missing warrior princes and preventing some war between the tribes. But that's sort of just a preliminary thing to get them through the gate, and they're going to discover that there's much more to motivate them beyond that point. So once they go through, they're going to come into this location called the Black Diamond. And this is where the Chronicle is. And I'll show you the map here. This is a map of floating rocks sort of in this void, and it's actually in this big empty cave. And right here is the Chronicle. It's this big black diamond with 3 colorful lines coming out to these receptacles in the ground where the 3 power cores go. Now, these are the power cores that the wizards and the spiders are warring over, and 2 of them have been discovered and 1 is still somewhere located in this complex. So there are also teleportation circles here that lead to different parts of this entire complex. So the direction that the characters go right from the beginning is very difficult to predict. But we'll kind of just go through line by line. So assuming that the characters maybe try to explore beneath these floating rocks, which, by the way, house some monsters called void bats that I wrote. So if the characters make a lot of noise and disturb these floating rocks too much, these big void bats are going to flap up and be very angry and attack them. But there's actually cave floor beneath, like a distance beneath these floating rocks, that is the site of perhaps an ancient lab of some kind. And you can see there's a huge rift here. And then there's a variety of different little shelled out buildings to explore. Now, in this adventure in particular, each section has its own sort of description of the likelihood of a random encounter and how frequent they might be. So generally speaking, there's a chance of a random encounter every 10 minutes or so, but it's usually between a 15 and 20% chance. And this might be worth sort of feeling out with your group depending on how slowly or quickly they like to explore, because you don't want it to become punitive, like an encounter every 5 feet or anything, but you also want them to get the sense that this place is alive and that there are creatures moving about and that they might encounter things if they linger too long. So feel free to bump that likelihood up and down a little bit as you go on, but definitely take advantage of the different encounter tables, which I included in the back here. For each section of the adventure, there's a different encounter table. Also, because the characters might be coming across lots of different beings, so many that I probably couldn't make an NPC block for each one, I created an NPC generator for the intelligence species so that you can have a bunch of potential NPCs in your pocket to whip out in case you need them. So here we go. We'll kind of go back to this. Now the characters, again, they could use a teleportation circle to travel. They could climb down this rift. And there's also a secret door that they could find that leads very deep down to the Lens Wizards complex. So assuming that they climb down the crevice, for example, or even fall down it, which is possible, that's actually going to take them to the warrens of the lunar spiders. And there's plenty of interesting stuff to explore in here. There's a teleportation circle, of course, but then there's also like an acid bath where there are some spiders that are trying to shed their skin. There's this pool where a lot of the baby hatchlings are, and this is actually where the power core is. It's nestled amongst these eggs to imbue intelligence into these future generations of lunar spiders. If the characters explore through this crevice, they'll find there's some cool treasure in here. They can take a different variety of routes around, but this is the bathroom for the lunar spiders, and this is where they're going to find a warrior prince who's hiding here. He fell down the pit and has dragged himself here and has been hiding. Ardo, he's one of the Kizian warrior princes, and the characters might be able to rescue him and get him out. There's also a place where there are some spiders dangling from the ceiling asleep. I wouldn't recommend disturbing them unless the characters have allied with or made friends with the spiders. And other areas include a shrine where there's a weird effigy that can actually imbue interesting powers, a thing called the spider charm, which is a new magic item in this adventure. There is a room where the food is kept, so there are actually a few, webbed up lens wizards there that the characters could either rescue or, it depends on how they feel about the lens wizards and whether they're allies with them at this point in the adventure or not. And then finally, this is the cave of the spider queen, Hiska, and they have some pretty fun names. They're very hissy and long. And the characters can talk to her, they can ally with her, they can fight her. There's a lot of stuff going on, and she's very intelligent, and she's willing to make deals that will help her get more power cores. And although she's kind of terrifying and creepy, she's not evil, and she could make a really interesting ally for the characters, or a pretty interesting enemy too. So that's the spider warrens. That's the level below the ground floor of that cave. And then going further down, now, I have to tell you, I'm just about to get the final map back for this, so I'm going to show you the draft map that I drew, which looks awful, and now you'll see why I work with artists who help me. But this is the draft map of the laboratory for the lens wizards. And there is, of course, a teleportation circle where the characters can visit directly if they want. And now this is sort of a more sterile, metallic, cold place. And there's a lot that the characters can do here as far as like circular exploration. So this is a sort of central hub room that leads into lots of other different places. If they were to go in this direction, there is a laboratory where the lens wizards make golems. They have a variety of different golems, like shield golems and stone golems, and there's even a big iron golem in here, in this area. But there's a golem that the characters can actually interact with who's almost entirely built, and he's a shield guardian that hasn't bound with anybody yet. So the characters actually can bind with this creature, and it can become an ally and a part of their party if they want to take that risk, Also, they can go north. There's a trash compactor, and this one's really fun. This is probably the gnarliest trap I've written in here. And in this room, this is actually a room that has a ceiling that seems to go up into this illusion field of stars, and there are two big red buttons on the walls that are flashing red, and players are going to push those buttons. But what they do is they activate an anti-gravity trap where the characters essentially have 3 rounds, and then everything in the room gets kind of sucked up towards the ceiling, and then it goes 500 feet and then hits a pulping grate. So any characters who hit that, they're going to have a really bad day. Because if they survive, they're also going to fall 500 feet back down to the ground. So I don't think, at this high of a level, there is not really a save or die effect that's damage related at this point. But if it kills a character, most groups have access to really powerful resurrection and revival magic. So it will probably just be a speed bump. But it's kind of fun to fall 500 feet twice, so I had to do that. But so the trash compactor is a pretty interesting thing. This is a medical lab with instruments that might animate and attack characters if they're not careful. And then moving in this direction, this is a lounge where there are some sleeping lens wizards who, if the characters risk it, actually talk in their sleep and may actually answer some questions the characters have. And there's also some treasure in here. Going up in this direction, this is a mold farm, and there are typically a few lens wizards in here in like hazmat suits tending this mold that they turn into food. And there also happens to be a secret door in this room that leads up from a higher level, so the characters could actually stumble into this room. But it's pretty toxic, so there are boxes with some safety gear in here, and if the characters put that gear on, they're immune to the poison in this room, but if not, they're going to be getting dealt some poison damage each round that they breathe the air in this room. And so finally, we're going to go over to this last section down here. So right here, there is a room with this like special sapphire that's floating over this bowl, and there are 4 lens wizards in here at all times monitoring this thing because it's generating a wall of force effect around the entire complex. And this is why the lunar spiders who can actually move through the ethereal plane have not been able to enter this complex and attack it. So the lens wizards are very carefully tending to this thing, and if this machine is deactivated, then lunar spiders are going to start appearing like crazy in here to try to get the power core that these guys have, which happens to be located in this room. Just real quick, this room down here is a prisoner room where the other warrior prince is being held. And there are 2 stone golems who are guarding this room, and they've got this like force cage spell around the prince, as well as a lunar spider who tried to betray his kind and was sort of cast out by the lens wizards. They're just holding him in here, and they don't quite know what to do with him, but he could be an informant to the characters potentially. Now, in this last room right here, there's a huge platform, and it's got this giant nest of cables with this big glass eye, and this is the telescope of the lens wizards, and they're using this to look at the ceiling, which is enchanted to show the night sky. So this is how the lens wizards are conducting their astronomy science. And there are 4 in here, 4 lens wizards, and they will obviously be very upset if the characters try to harm or damage this telescope. And the telescope has a power core in its base. So the lens wizards got their hands on one of these power cores, and it is actually powering the telescope to greater heights. So the final thing to note is that the telescope itself is like a transformer. So if it's under attack, or if the lens wizards in this room are under attack, it rearranges itself into a gargantuan-sized iron golem. And I included the stats in a combat card for that thing. It has like a longer reach, and it's very big, and it's going to start smashing the faces of those who affront it. So that could be a pretty interesting final fight. Or if the characters have allied with the lens wizards, maybe they will not invoke its wrath, but we'll see. So after the exploration of this whole area, the characters are going to have a really good idea of what's been going on here. They may have allied with some people or not. They may decide to take the 3 power cores for themselves, because they can find the final one. The third one, which the lens wizards are looking for, is actually on the cavern floor. It's in one of these, it's actually in this building. And the lens wizards are currently trying to find it, but just have not found it yet. So if the characters get their hands on all 3 power cores, they actually could activate the Chronicle, which was that first big black diamond that they saw. And the Chronicle could rewrite a segment of time, one event that happened at any point within the last 1,000 years. It could be the birth of an enemy, or the death of a great king, or some big event. It can actually undo that. So that could be a very big campaign-changing moment for them. In doing so, they actually deactivate all the power cores for 1,000 years, so then the lens wizards and the spiders will probably be mad. And who knows, maybe the characters will give all the power cores to the spiders, or all of them to the wizards, or something. So it's really hard to guess what they're going to do with these things, but the fun of it is figuring out what decision the characters will make in that regard. So this is, like I said, a somewhat different adventure than what I've written. It's so open-ended that I can't even tell you what will happen in the end. I just hope it leads to a lot of fun, really exciting exploration for some high-level characters, and, sort of a crazy environment like nothing they've ever seen before. So if you give this one a run, let me know what you think. You can pick this up on the arcanelibrary.com, either by itself or as a part of the Legends of the Library Volume 1. There you can get it at a discounted price with 3 other adventures I'm just releasing. So I hope that you enjoy it, and thanks for listening to this walkthrough. So happy gaming, and I'll talk to y'all later. All right, bye.